The Ukrainians have hit back at Russia, and now they have invaded. Okay, so they went on a little field trip into a place called Belgorod, and this is right here on the border. Let me show you on the map. You can see there, that's Belgorod, right? So it's not too far from Kharkiv, actually, but you know, we're zoomed out a little. In any case, they basically went in, and the group that stormed Belgorod is the Free Russian Legion, as they call themselves. So it's supposedly, right, allegedly, it's a bunch of ragtag rebels, Russian defectors who've you know, switched sides and are fighting for Ukraine. Now, keep in mind, this is a unit inside the Ukrainian armed forces. I mean, you know, whether it was or wasn't isn't really the point. Obviously, someone in Washington and in Kiev is giving them the order to go in. Now, if you ask me, and I'll get into my analysis in a second, but so let me just show you the clips. I mean, these guys are honestly funny. They're honestly funny. Look at this, just like live streaming a cross-border raid.
Говорил мне батя, иди на тракториста учись, блядь. Я нет, пошел военный.
Пиздец, трофейный БТР-82А от ФСБ Российской Федерации. Украина. Вот так вот. Работает РДК. Благодарим шайбу за то, что...
So they're in an army personnel vehicle, an APC, and they're going in. They've also got a tank. Well, from the sounds of it, the Russians made mincemeat out of them. So the Russians claim, and again, we have to take this with a pinch of salt, right? They said 70 killed with a zero, 70 killed. Okay, now the Free Russia Legion, as they call themselves, they're about 1,000, as the Ukrainians claim, 1,000 men in this unit, and they said that they actually took no losses, so 0 killed during this Belgorod raid or invasion, and only 2 wounded. So, I mean, I honestly think it's somewhere in between. You know, the Russians are going to exaggerate how many they killed, and the Ukrainians or the Free Russia Legion are going to, you know, try and minimize their losses. It's just how it is. You always have to take figures with a pinch of salt during a war. Here's some footage of the footage filmed by residents and posted online of this attack happening. Okay, so I showed you the other perspective. Let's look at this one now. So this is likely from the Russians hitting back at them, right? Because they mopped this up, or shall we, you know, as they say, mopping up operation. They fixed all of this. They finished the whole thing in a matter of hours, right? So here you can see the helicopters. That's about the as much Russian as I can speak. Что это? It means what is that? Что говорит is what are you saying? Here's another video. Nothing too spectacular, you know. It's not apocalypse now, but I'm just giving you what we have. So and what's been published. Here's the governor, and as the, you know, the Russians are framing this as a counterterrorism operation. Okay, so I mean, I guess you know, it's more of an incursion than a terrorist attack. But here, let's look at what he said.
Продолжается зачистка территории Министерством обороны силовыми структурами. Но возвращаться пока в свои дома. Я сейчас обращаюсь к жителям Грайворонского района, которые, спасибо большое, покинули свои жилые дома. Временно пока не стоит. Мы сразу сообщим, и я сообщу в своих социальных сетях, и главы местного самоуправления доведут информацию, когда будет безопасно.
Okay, I mean, pretty much, pretty standard message. Here's the Russian defense minister. Let's look at what he said.
The Kiev regime.
Sorry, not the defense minister. He's not Shoigu. He's the spokesperson.
Having suffered a defeat in the city of Artemovsk, has switched to the implementation of terrorist tactics against civilians. On May 22nd, a unit of Ukrainian nationalists invaded the territory of the Russian Federation. During a counterterrorism operation, the nationalist formations were thwarted and defeated. More than 70 Ukrainian terrorists, 4 armored combat vehicles, and 5 pickup trucks were destroyed. The Kiev regime, having suffered a defeat in the city of Artemovsk, has switched to the implementation of terrorist tactics against...
Right, so it's just repeated. I mean, he's talking about... I keep wanting to jump in, so let me just get through the videos first, right? Here's Borrell, head of the EU. The foreign minister of the EU, he kind of had no clue what was happening, right? So they filmed him, and he was like, "Belgo what?"
Vraiment, je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qui se passe à Belgrade.
No. He thought they were talking about Belgrade.
I'm not. Everything is disgusting.
Well, I mean...
Belgorod in Russia. The Belgorod Oblast.
I mean, look, I've just thought to show it to you. Obviously, we will find out, about the news one way or another. But listen, it turns out that you had one civilian who was killed in the end and several people wounded, right? So let me show you some of the footage of the aftermath. This is filmed at the site. I find these two vehicles very interesting, and I'll get back to the Humvees in a second. Christ. Yeah, so it didn't end very well for them. Let's put it that way. Now, the funny thing is that the Americans, they say that they don't condone or approve of attacks, inside Russia. And they, when asked, they were not sure. They couldn't speak to whether American equipment was used to attack Belgorod. Now, I find that kind of funny because the two trucks that I just showed you here, these are Humvees. Okay, so they're basically H2 Hummers that have been converted for military purposes, right? That have been driven around Iraq and Afghanistan a million times. I mean, you ask anyone who's lived through the American occupation, they all know what this is. These are American Humvees. Now, grant you the Russian tank that went in was not obviously American, but where did they capture these Humvees from? The Russian, military depot? I really doubt that. Obviously, the Americans have been giving them equipment, or Kiev has been giving them equipment, and they've been using it. But here, the State Department spokesperson, he had, he pretended not to know anything about it.
Yeah. So in Belgrade, there are obviously these reports, and there's images online that suggest American weapons have been used. So I know you don't know, but do you support U.S. weapons being used on Russian territory? And would that change the calculus of providing F-16s to Ukraine?
So with respect to the calculus of providing F-16s to Ukraine, the president has made very clear that we will begin training the Ukrainian military to pilot F-16s, and we will work with our allies and partners on the provision of F-16s to Ukraine. I don't have any announcements about when or how that will happen or what countries they'll come from, but it is a priority for us, and we will begin to implement that in the coming months. And then with respect to the broader policy question, we have made very clear to the Ukrainians that we don't enable or encourage attacks outside Ukrainians' borders. But I do think it's important to take a step back and remind everyone and remind the world that, of course, it is Russia that launched this war. It's Russia that continues to launch attacks on civilians in Ukraine. It's Russia that's targeted schools and hospitals and civilian infrastructure. So it is up to Ukraine to decide how they want to conduct their military operations, but it is Russia that has been the aggressor in this war. Yeah, Jenny.
You know, I mean, it's a pretty big non-answer, but I can guarantee you these are American military vehicles, and there's no way they captured them from the Russians and repurposed them for this incursion. So I mean, it's look, man, the real reason that they did this, because it's actually a pointless exercise, right? This incursion, it's completely pointless. The real reason they did this is because of Bakhmut. The Ukrainians, I mean, everybody really got their asses kicked in Bakhmut. It's just absolute hellhole, of a fight. It's like World War I level of brutality. And the thing is, in the end, the Russians took it. The Russians won in Bakhmut. So the only way that they could deflect from that defeat, because look, this is the longest raging battle in the Ukraine war. So you can't come here after you've lost and say, well, it's not a strategic place anymore. And I'm going to get to Bakhmut in a second. So there's a whole video about Bakhmut in a second. You can't come after the longest battle and say it doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, it's not so much that whether the place is strategic or not. Obviously, that's a factor. But this has been the longest battle, period. It's a fact. It's quantifiable. And it does matter. And so to deflect from that, they launched this absolutely pointless raid into Russia. They killed a bunch of people. I mean, whether it's 70 people or the one civilian is dead on the Russian side, right? So, but whether it's 70 of these free Russia legionaries killed or 15, I mean, you sent these men in. They're young men. They're fighters. You sent them and wasted their lives for what? I mean, they talk about how Bakhmut is so, it's not strategic and it's pointless and it has no value. Well, what about Belgorod? Again, no offense to anyone who's from Belgorod or Bakhmut. I'm talking about from a military point of view, right? If Bakhmut has no value, what value does this raid into Belgorod have? None. The value was propaganda, and instead of talking about Bakhmut, now everybody's talking about Belgorod. Well, I'm not going to let you off the hook because I haven't even started with Bakhmut. Okay, and the Americans are supplying. I mean, come on, man. Even if you look at it this way, where we know the Americans are supplying Kiev, and then Kiev gave them the trucks. Well, then that's the Americans supplying you, right? It's you can't separate those two things. And they're playing a very dangerous game here. I mean, can you imagine if Mexico was like using Russian weapons to go into Texas? I mean, what the. Right? It's like inconceivable. It's unconscionable. We don't even begin to entertain such thoughts, right? Heaven, pray. Here, let me show you this guy. He's a representative of the Freedom of Russia Legion, right? Or the Free Russian Legion. I really don't care. They're about as useless as this Free Syrian Army, meaning not very, very useful. Here he is talking and answering some questions. Let's take a look.
Together. The Legion is made of 4 battalions, and Russian Volunteer Corps is another battalion. So their total capacity is 5 battalions. A lot of equipment they have captured already there on the ground. In terms of the objective, obviously the objective is to liberate Russian territory. That's the main objective, and to wave this white, blue and white flag, like the one behind me, the flag of Free Russia, so that our country starts to get liberated, and this is what we have achieved.
Jesus Christ, this guy sounds so ridiculous. I understand the Ukrainians saying we have to liberate our country and so on. Dude, you're Russian. What do you mean we have to liberate our country? What are you talking about? It sounds like these morons who are in the Free Syrian Army or Syrian opposition. Dude, you're living in another dimension. You're living on another planet, man. I mean, lucky you in that case, but I don't mean it in a good way.
Already. The second thing is to promote the idea of resistance among Russians, primarily, obviously, armed resistance, to get more volunteers to join.
It sounds like an MI6 brief. You know, the idea is to promote resistance among Russians. Yes, I know. I get the idea.
In our ranks, to join the resistance movement, which is right now on the rise. The
resistance movement. What resistance movement, man? Now, look, don't get me wrong. It's perfectly healthy for people to question their government, and they should do that. And you know, I'm all for it. But these guys are basically saying, like, yeah, let's attack Russia with American weapons and promote that as resistance. What resistance, man? What are you talking about? Are you sure most Russians agree with you before you went and got the weapons? Maybe you should consult with them.
To inspire Russians, to show them that the liberation is near. And thirdly, the objective obviously has a military aspect. Right now, our guys are creating demilitarized zone between Russia and Ukraine, and also it's a major diversion of military forces from Ukrainian front line.
So look, I will give him this. He's saying, I mean, okay, this thing about creating a DMZ is outrageous. What DMZ? But this was very embarrassing for Russia. There's no way around it. I know it's you know. The Russians dealt with it quickly and so on, but you can't change the fact that you had a bunch of Ukrainians and you know, free Russia legionaries who went into Russia with armored vehicles, and they did that. It's a fact. That's very embarrassing. And as I said a few moments ago, the entire purpose of that was propaganda, because now you've deflected and diverted attention away from Bakhmut, and now you're making the Russians look like they have a weak border, like the border is out of control, like anyone can just roll in or stroll in, or rather roll in with tanks. Yeah, it's definitely a propaganda win, because the mainstream media in the West, you know, what am I going to say? I better stop, and we'll wait before, because I'm going to talk about Bakhmut in a second, but I'll let the guy finish.
And that's a significant help towards coming Ukrainian offensive.
Right, but...
And yes, at the end of the day, it would end with just one outcome. Our guys will be in Moscow, and Putin will not be in Kremlin.
The Kremlin...
In other cities of Russia. He is systematically harassing and murdering his political opponents, as we very well know. Right now, he's terrorizing Ukraine. And he's officially been recognized by international community as the leader of terrorist state, and he himself is a wanted criminal.
I'm sorry, are you talking about our prime minister? Or an American president?
By international court in The Hague. So what we are doing, we are attacking the key people of this regime, its key ideology.
Yeah, you know, Putin lives in Belgorod. For those of you who are interested in a little cross-border incursion. Here's another interview with these guys. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Могу сказать это следующее. Как в свое время сказал Владимир Путин, в любом военторге в современной ситуации можно приобрести военную технику любого рода, поэтому я не думаю, что это какая-то экзотика.
Do you see the guy with the sunglasses next to him here? He looks so funny, man. He's like, yeah, damn right we can. We can buy it anytime, man, anywhere. They just airdrop him, air delivery.
Второй момент. Да, есть достаточно американской техники, которая была добыта в бою в Бахмуте.
Wow, that's funny. So now he's saying the Russians captured American Humvees and then lost them to the Ukrainians. Damn, man, this guy's doing mental gymnastics. We should all clap. You know, he's a gold medalist.
Российской стороной она переходит из рук в руки. Вот, поэтому таким вещам не стоит удивляться. Да, те же броневики можно купить на черном рынке, на частном рынке. То есть это не является чем-то там супер-сверхсекретным.
То есть вы отрицаете разбитую... Простите, то есть вы отрицаете, что эта техника принадлежит вам, и она там, потери у вас есть?
Слава богу, у русского добровольческого корпуса есть только потери в...
Yeah, he dodged the question, right? I guess he has to.
Раненых в легких, раненых у нас 2 300-х. По технике у нас только приобретение.
Канал 1+1. Какие на данный момент у вас успехи и есть ли поддержка среди граждан Российской Федерации?
Что значит, какие у нас успехи?
Ну, на данный момент, вот сколько прошло...
Yo, man, the guy to the far right, he looks like some Green Beret in Vietnam in the 70s. God, man, these guys are really funny, you know, honestly. They definitely put on a good show. I'm entertained.
Шли, вот где сейчас, как
Здесь,
сейчас ситуация?
сейчас мы здесь.
Нет, это понятно.
Так.
Успехи на территории Российской Федерации.
Я думаю, что любое пересечение границы государственной с Российской Федерацией и успешное возвращение назад, безусловно, можно назвать успехом, да, потому что...
Now, look, man, he's saying it's a success. I saw, unfortunately, the pictures of you know, and the videos, and actually that video where you saw the destroyed vehicles was cut short because I'm not allowed and to show you the rest of it, and they definitely lost some people. So I mean, he's not being truthful in that regard. But yeah, if you consider that this was done to divert attention from Bakhmut, yeah, it was a success. Because you know, when the Russians won in Bakhmut and they took Bakhmut, they have changed the situation on the ground, because the entire Ukraine war is being waged, you know, purely on the battlefield. There's no peace talks, there's no nothing, you know, on in the diplomatic realm or in that regard. So it's all about the battlefield, okay? And the Russians won the longest battle. Now you be careful, because you know, when they did this cross-border raid into Russia, this is why you have a saying about, you know, the battle may have been won, but the war is lost, right? So I mean, the war, we've yet to see who's going to win it, but you know, you shouldn't always celebrate just because you won a battle. You still have to win the war, and obviously neither side has won it, but you know, the Ukrainians, they definitely stole a bit of their thunder in terms of Bakhmut.